My name is Paige. I'm 27 years old. 6 months ago, I got married and ended up becoming a full-time housewife after that. My husband, Steven, was the same age as me, and because he had never lived alone until now, he didn't know how to do anything around the house. He was the one that asked me to become a full-time housewife because he wanted me to take care of everything at home. Since we didn't have any children, one might think that I would have plenty of free time on my hands, but actually, there were a lot of things that I needed to do outside of the chores, so my life was pretty hectic. One of those things that I had to do was to go and check in the apartment where my grandfather was living. My grandfather was living in a small apartment by himself, and this apartment was actually his property. And that's why I was helping him to take care of the apartment. Both of my parents passed away young, and so I am the only one left that can take care of my grandfather after all. I thought that my husband was being considerate of how busy I am, and that's why he suggested that I become a full-time housewife. Because he can't do chores himself, and knowing how busy I was, I thought that that was why he let me be a full-time housewife. And I was touched by his kindness. But it turned out that I was wrong. Not long after we got married, I came to understand that that was not the case at all. How did I find that out, you may ask? If you look at one of our conversations, then you would be able to tell in one glance. For dinner today, I made your favorite deep-fried shrimp, Steven. I got the extra-large shrimp and also made homemade tartar sauce for you. I was really excited because I thought I did a pretty good job, if I may say so myself. But when Steven saw the delicious-looking shrimp in front of him, he scrunched up his face.
Why do you and I have the same number of fried shrimp on our plates?
And here we go again. Recently, Steven was starting to pick fights with me more and more often. So I see he wants to pick a fight about the number of fried shrimp on the plates.
I'm going out to work hard every single day. Why do I have the same number of shrimp on my plate as you and you're just lazing around at home all day? There's no way that's acceptable.
Well then, I'll give you one of my fried shrimp. I felt like I had no choice but to give one of my shrimp to Steven, and when I did, he seemed to accept it.
You should have done that from the beginning. You should be more thoughtful. I'm the one that's letting you eat this food. Don't think that you're on the same level as me, the master of the house.
Yeah. He says that he's letting me eat his food, but I'm actually only receiving $500 a month from Steven for living expenses. Before we got married, I was working, and so we were splitting the living expenses, 50-50. But even after I quit my job, he was still only putting in $500. Even though I told him multiple times that it wasn't enough, he refuses to listen at all. And not only that, but everything that we needed to do in order to begin our newlywed lives together, he completely leaves to me. My newlywed life was off to the worst start, with very little positive motivation, which leads me to today. A few days later, one day, when I came home after helping my grandfather at his apartment, my husband was already home. Even though he didn't tell me that he was going to be home early that day, I had a feeling that this is going to turn into a disaster. I'm home. As I expected, Steven was standing there with his arms crossed, glaring at me.
Must be nice to be a full-time housewife. You get to go out and play whenever you want.
I wasn't going out to play. I was at my grandfather's apartment.
Huh? But it's your job as a full-time housewife to do chores, isn't it? What happened to my dinner?
It's crazy to demand dinner when you're home 2 hours earlier than usual. I was going to get dinner ready before you came home from work.
Whatever, forget it. Looks like that poor old man is more important to you than me.
Poor old man? Are you talking about my grandfather?
You said he owned an apartment, so I was looking forward to what kind of rich philanthropist he might be. And yeah, it was such a broken down apartment. What a disappointment. I always heard that it was the jackpot to get someone with property, but that place was just a disappointing loss. What a waste of my excitement.
Excuse me? What do you mean a disappointing loss? It was true that my grandfather's apartment may have been quite old, but it definitely wasn't a loss. It was still property that he owned.
Don't just stand there. Hurry up and make my dinner.
Steven said whatever he wanted to say, and then he stormed off to the bedroom and locked himself in it. What is with this guy? Why is he dragging my grandpa into this? I held on the anger that was starting to boil inside of me, and I started preparing dinner. The word divorce popped up into my head, but it's only been 6 months since we got married. I couldn't just get a divorce already at this point. However, just in case, I explained the situation to my grandfather, and I secured a place to run to just in case anything were to happen. A few days later, Steven's princess attitude only became worse and worse by the day. I was starting to think that I was reaching my limit when the defining incident occurred to push my decision. And that was when I had finished all of the chores around the house for the day, and I grabbed the pudding that I was looking forward to out of the fridge.
Hey, what happened to my portion?
What? What do you mean? You were eating yours while I was washing all of the dishes. My husband had already finished eating his own portion of pudding, so of course there wasn't any left. You just ate yours a minute ago. Was it good? Perhaps he didn't like my attitude because my husband glared at me with vicious eyes.
Why should I have to eat the same number of things as an unemployed, useless housewife?
What do you mean unemployed? I take care of all the chores around the house, and if anything, I am digging into my savings account in order to provide living expenses for us.
Well, whoa. A full-time housewife is the same thing as being unemployed. And first of all, the only reason why we don't have enough for living expenses is because you don't know how to manage money.
Excuse me? Obviously, there's no way that $500 would be enough.
And that pudding, you were able to buy it because I put my sweat and tears into working. I'm the one that's letting you eat it.
It's amazing that he keeps saying he's the one letting me eat it, and I don't know how to manage money. Oh, please. I have been saving up ever since before we got married, so I would be prepared in case of an emergency or for retirement.
A poor and unemployed housewife, the only thing you have to do is do the chores and support your husband. A full-time housewife is the same thing as a parasite, so you should be grateful to me.
What do you mean poor and unemployed? Even though I have $500,000 in savings? That's right. Actually, right now, I had $500,000 in my savings account. As for why I had that much money, I'll get to that later.
And an unemployed housewife shouldn't be enjoying the nice things off of my money.
And then, Steven saw the brief moment when I let down my guard. And to my disbelief, he stole my pudding out of my hands. What are you doing? No, my pudding! I tried to grab it back immediately, but to my shock, Steven opened his mouth wide like a hippo, and he dumped the entire pudding into his mouth at once. No! That was my pudding! Steven took one big gulp, and he grinned from ear to ear. This guy, I can't believe he just swallowed my precious pudding whole! How dare he? Pudding should be enjoyed slowly, bite by bite. The harmony of the eggs and the milk blending together to create the most heavenly texture as the pudding melts in your mouth. That's how it ought to be enjoyed.
Pudding sure is delicious after I worked hard for it. You know what they say, only those who can work can eat. Did you hear that, you unemployed, lazy, useless housewife Paige?
Ugh. It's not just breakfast and dinner every day. I even make him a lunch to take to work. I do the laundry, I clean, I do all of the payments of bills, I pay all of our insurance, I manage the household finances. Who do you think it is that's doing all of this for you? But I held in my anger, and I suppressed it inside of me. Because no matter what I say to a guy like this, he's never going to understand anyway. Well then, what am I going to do, you ask? Of course, I need him to experience firsthand himself. In that case, I'm going to leave.
Excuse me? You're unemployed. You think you can leave this house and survive? Do you still not understand that you're able to live because of my money? What, are you gonna leave and then go live in the park or something?
No, I plan on going to my grandfather's place and staying there.
So you're gonna live in that crappy apartment. I'm sure you're not gonna be able to last there for long.
Who knows about that? I bet it's going to be so comfortable and that I'm going to regret this time that I spent living here with you.
What did you just say? You? Who do you think you are? If you come crying to me later, that's not my business. Hurry up and get out. Divorce. We're getting a divorce.
And that's exactly what I want. Now, let's see who's the one's going to regret it. You better watch out, and I'm going to teach you that my anger when it comes to the pudding is very scary. So I was able to get a divorce from Steven. I thought that there would be a lot of things that would be a pain, like the separation of assets. But to my shock, Steven was very quick to put a stamp on the divorce papers, and my married life quickly came to an end. From there, I was able to start my new life. 3 months later, after divorcing Steven, who loved to play the king of patriarchy, I was living a free and happy life without him. I was able to protect my $500,000 of savings. And so, case closed, you think? No, this is only the beginning. I was eating my favorite pudding at home when suddenly a visitor appeared at the front door. And that person was none other than my ex-husband, Steven. I was already expecting him to show up here. I was enjoying my pudding, so I made my ex-husband wait 10 minutes in front of the door of the house. I thoroughly enjoyed my pudding, and then I finally opened up the door for him.
Paige, I wanted to see you.
My ex-husband had both arms wide open as he came towards me, and very swiftly, I avoided him.
Paige!
What a pathetic voice. And plus, compared to 3 months ago, he had very clearly lost weight and even started growing those bags under his eyes.
I regret getting divorced from you, Paige. I wanted to get back together with you, and so I went to see your grandpa, and he was the one that told me about this apartment. I heard it all from your grandpa. I didn't know that you were so rich, Paige.
Excuse me? My grandpa told you that? What a joke. I already told my grandfather that if Steven went there to find me, that he could tell him everything. I asked him to feed him some bait.
I never could have imagined that you'd be living in an apartment like this.
An apartment like this? You're just as rude as ever.
That's not what I meant. That's not what I meant when I said that. That's not it. It's just that I didn't know that you were living on the top floor of a luxury apartment like this.
Steven seemed uncomfortable in my apartment as he looked around from side to side. That's right. The place where I was living was the most expensive apartment building in this area, and I was on the top floor.
And plus, I heard that you received that apartment from your grandpa, and you're getting rent from that too, right? That's so unfair that you kept such important information to yourself. If you have income from rent, then you're not the only one that doesn't have to work. I also wouldn't have to work.
That's right. Not only that, I had actually received a number of my grandfather's properties from him, and I even collect rent on them. Just as I expected, Steven was biting onto the bait. He was hooked.
When I saw that crappy apartment that your grandpa was living in, I gave up because I didn't think I could rely on any inheritance. But I didn't know that you were actually rich. He owned an apartment this amazing, and he's living in that run-down apartment over there. It was misleading and made me misunderstand.
Oh, please. This is why amateurs are such a pain.
Huh?
My grandfather doesn't like tall buildings, and he says that he's friends with everybody in the apartment building, and he doesn't want to leave them.
I didn't know that. That's pretty amazing. So anyway, I was thinking that I want to be married to you again, Paige. And it's not because you're rich or anything like that. I just thought that maybe you were struggling and having a hard time by yourself. And so I was worried about you, and I went to go see your grandpa. And I just so happened to hear when I was there that you're rich. I mean, yeah, of course, I would want a little bit of, money, but but I just didn't think that you were this amazing, Paige. I guess you could say that I realized my true feelings, which is that I want to live with you. How do I say this? I just thought that I would be able to find happiness with you, Paige, right?
Oh, please. I can see right through your true intentions like an X-ray. Interesting. So you're not just after me for the money?
Obviously, that's not the case. Of course not.
Even though you were belittling me so much back then, if you're not going to tell me the real reason why you're coming back all this time later and wanting to become a married couple again, obviously I'm going to think that it's because you're after me for the money. Then Steven dropped down on his knees on the spot and tried to start apologizing.
Paige, I was wrong. These were 99 days that I truly felt my gratitude towards you down to my bones.
Wow, he's even counted down the days.
Since you left, I've been so sad. So sad I can barely stand it. When I lost you, I realized for the first time what an important person you were. I was the one that was wrong. I'm so sorry. Please come back.
As my ex-husband was apologizing to me like this, I took a deep breath and gave him my most honest answer. Absolutely not. That was all I said.
But why not? I'm going this far. Your husband is bowing down to you. I'm even on my knees apologizing.
He's down on his knees, but what an arrogant attitude. But that's what this guy is like. Ugh, what a disgrace. And what kind of value do you have when you're on your knees? I'm not so bored that I have time to be entertaining your obvious fake act. And plus, you're not my husband anymore. You're my ex-husband. And from now on, forever, I'm going to be attaching the word ex to that.
But no, I really didn't know that you actually had money until I heard it from your grandpa. It's just that I wanted you to come back so you could take care of the household as you always have been, and I just wanted to get back to my easy life that I had before.
I knew it. Stephen didn't lift a finger when it came to anything outside of the office. And of course, there was no way that he would be able to survive on his own. I already predicted this. In that case, why don't you go back and move in with your parents again?
My older brother and his wife moved into that house, so they told me there was no space for me anymore.
Oh dear, how unfortunate.
Please, I'm begging you, let's live together again. If it's you, Paige, you can make things work with $500 a month, can't you? Every month I'm losing money and it's a disaster. I wasn't even able to pay rent last month. At this rate, I'm not going to be able to pay rent next month either. My insurance contract was terminated already, too. With your income from all the rent that you're collecting, you can pay my rent, too.
This guy seriously doesn't understand anything, does he? You really think that we were able to survive off of $500 a month? Even though rent is $800 a month? Please, how could we possibly live with $500 a month? You can't even do the most basic math. I'm amazed that you were able to keep a full-time job at a company. You don't even have a grasp of how much rent or any of the bills cost. How very typical of you.
What? What is that supposed to mean?
Seriously, he doesn't know anything about the world. No matter how many times I try to talk to you about our living expenses, you refuse to lift a finger. Even though you were the one that asked me to become a full-time housewife, you don't even try to do anything to support the household. Normally, it's the standard of standards to give some allowance to your wife if she's not earning any money. And yet, you wouldn't say anything at all. I was so over it. I couldn't believe that you didn't even know the rules of society. But thanks to that, I'm so glad that I was able to keep it a secret that I had income from collecting rent on the properties. If I told you that I had my own allowance, you would find out about that income. If you found out that I was earning way more than you from collecting rent, you definitely would have misunderstood and thought that you could live off of me and quit your job. So in some ways, ignorance is bliss. And I'm grateful for that. Thanks, Stephen. The fact that I own these apartments now, I was planning on telling him on our 3-year anniversary, and yet not even 6 months had passed before we both discovered the truth about each other. But I guess it's important to keep precious things, and only revealed them a little by little. I really am so glad that you were bad at managing anything in the household, because I was able to protect my secret. I also got to see your true nature, and I was also easily able to get a divorce from the worst patriarchy-loving crap husband thanks to that too.
Wait a minute, what about a separation of assets? From what I remember, when you get a divorce, the couple splits the assets down the middle, right?
Oh dear, even though he doesn't know anything else about life, he knows about the separation of assets, huh? Oh dear, so you figured that out? When I said that, even though Stephen was panicking until just a few seconds ago, he started to grin.
Your income from collecting rent is multiple times my salary, isn't it? And on top of that, you also said that you had a lot of savings. If you're not going to get back together with me, then you better give me half of that money. But if you agree to let me move in here, then I'll let you off of paying that money to me. So what are you gonna do? Get remarried to me and protect your savings, or hand over half of it to me and end things?
Obviously, the answer is no to both of those.
Excuse me? But the separation of assets is definitely going to happen. If you're not gonna pay, then I'll sue you.
Why don't you do what you want? But as somebody who clearly doesn't know how things work, let me teach you a good lesson.
Huh?
The only thing that is included in the separation of assets is the income that was collected during the time of marriage. My savings I've had since I received the properties from my grandfather when I was 20 years old, which means that it's not income that I received while I was married to you.
Huh? But obviously you have the income from the 6 months that we were married.
Nope, nothing.
Excuse me?
Because the apartments were getting old and they were under construction, I don't have any rent income from a year ago.
What?
And not only that, but while we were married, a portion of the cost of construction was taken out of my account, which was $80,000. So my income was actually minus $80,000. Because your annual salary doesn't even reach $50,000, it puts about $30,000 of a deficit between the two of us. Does that mean you're going to separate the assets and take mine on, which is a debt of $15,000?
No way! How is that possible?
For the record, if I wanted to go through the separation of assets, then that would mean that you would have to pay $15,000.
Stop that! Don't do it! I already told you that I didn't have any money anymore.
Well, I'm not that evil, so I wouldn't take it that far. But in that case, hurry up and get out. I'm busy. I have a lot to do to take care of this place. After all, I am unemployed and lazing around. My ex-husband finally understood that he wasn't going to be able to get 1 cent out of me. He dropped his shoulders and turned out the front door.
So, with this, that means our relationship is completely over. I just want you to know this. I truly did love you, Paige. You were my soulmate.
Steven.
I don't want to erase our past like we never had a relationship.
I also feel the same.
Paige, really, is that so? In that case...
Because the way that you treated me while we were married isn't something that I can just erase away.
What?
I will make sure that you pay a full settlement fee for the divorce, so I hope you're ready.
Settlement fee?
Until I receive the full settlement fee, you're not going to be able to get rid of me, so you better be ready.
Paige?
After I said that, I slammed the front door shut and blocked Steven out of my apartment. He was banging on the door, but somebody must have called the police and he was taken away. After that, I presented all of the recordings I had taken of Steven's harassment and turned it into a lawyer. I was able to receive a full settlement fee in the divorce. Of course, he wasn't able to manage the household chores or finances after that, and his life became a disaster. I heard he started no-call, no-showing to work often, and eventually he was fired. Even then, in order to pay the settlement fee and to supplement the living expenses that weren't enough, I heard that he had to take out a loan. Since Steven didn't know how the world works, apparently he saw a poster on a telephone pole and borrowed money from the first place that he found. And I heard now he's stuck working in a very suspicious storage facility. As for me after that, because I wanted to know more about real estate and owning properties, I decided to get a job at a real estate company. Even though I had the income from rent on my properties, I needed to make sure that I can save up enough for repair costs and other necessities. And plus, it's fun to work, and I was happy to be back in an office. And this is why a pudding after work is the best. Recently, my post-bath pudding wasn't enough, and I added one more to my daily happiness. I have my hands full with the chores and managing my properties and my job, but the busier I am, the more delicious the pudding is. Well then, tomorrow is another hard day of work.
Thank you for watching! What kind of crazy people will we get to see next? Stay tuned for more!